All right. All right. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Bison, aka Bison Trades, over on Twitter. Welcome back to another episode of RareFUD Radio. On today's episode, we got probably the hottest name in Web3 right now, whether you're on BTC, ETH, Solana, whoever. You know who BitGod is. Just monumental growth on his Twitter account. If you don't follow him, go follow him at BitGod21 over on Twitter. We're going to break down everything, Ordinals, BRC-20, what's going on with OXBT, what's going on with Redacted, and he's so much smarter than me when it comes to this stuff. So I'm excited to just break it down with him and just ask super low-level questions from the left side of my brain. But join with me as always, my wonderful co-host, my content brother in Christ, Mr. Door. Door, how we living today?
Yo, dog, what's going on, man? Every day is a holiday, and it's feeling like Christmas, dog. We got BitGod on the show today. Can't wait to dive into him about everything OXBT related. Talk about recursive inscriptions. Been speaking about that a little bit before the show, but yeah, man, I'm super excited to jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be a ton of fun, dude. I'm looking forward to it. Like this was so unexpected, honestly. And so whenever we get the time for BitGod, I know he's got a ton going on his plate. So we're gonna make the most of it. And join with us as always as our other co-host, Mr. JoeSol. Joe, how we living?
We're doing well today, man. We're doing well. Excited to talk to BitGod today. Super excited. It's one of the few things in this space I look forward to. Like OXBT within itself is just like kind of a tool for a mechanism that we haven't seen before. So I'm excited to hear more about it today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Jumping right into it as we always do. Let's talk a little bit about the market. For those that are new to the show, we used to be like strictly Solana. Now I think we're just cross-chain. We talk about everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we jump into everything. But we are going to start off with Solana, going over to tiexo.com. Head over to that analytics tab. 68,000 Solana volume. Not really good. I would imagine here's what's happening. Everybody's saving their liquidity for Bodagos, Migos, Akama coming up, and like there's a bunch of mints on the horizon, and I think everybody's just on pause, worrying about that before we jump into some new liquidity events over on Solana. There's a lot of stuff that's exciting on the horizon, but I think this is going to be kind of a slow week, which is perfect because we get to jump over into the world of BRC-20s, and it could not happen at a better time. Obviously, if you missed last episode, we did talk about the impact of the ETF, and all these major names jumping in to the market. We really didn't even talk about the new exchange. Again, just tinfoil hat, put a SEC complaint against crypto, two of the biggest exchanges. And then, oh, by the way, like Citadel, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, they're all coming together and linking up for a new exchange. Smells fishy. That
tail is old as time.
Bitcoin to 30K.
Yep.
I know, bro. I know. It's fishy. It's fishy, but that's okay, because it got Bitcoin where it is right now. And I would say that Bitcoin, ETH, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, if you want to take a stab at something, those were the ones that weren't labeled securities in the SEC complaint. Not that I think the ones that were labeled a security are really going to pass any sort of test or litmus test. I think there's just going to be updated regulation. But moral of the story, Bitcoin's looking great, dude. We're back above 30K. Man. Things are cooking over there. And I'm just excited because now we have a new asset class to go with Bitcoin. And so, we're going to talk to BitGod a little bit about, the laser eyes versus, the Ordinals forefront folks. We're going to talk about OXBT, BRC-20, Ordinals in general. But before we do, let's jump into the market. Guys, how are we feeling? Let's start off with Dor, then head over to Joe.
Man, I'm feeling hella good about the market, man. Nice to see BTC back above 30K. I remember back, a year and a half ago, during that crash from 60K. No, during May, the Elon crash where it crashed back to like 28K. We're like, oh, crypto's coming into it, and then it pumped back up to 70,000, then crashed back all the way down to 16,000. Man, I was like, I'm super happy to be sitting at 30K again after all of that, man. It's been a rough time. So seeing a solid 30K BTC gives me a lot more optimism for alts in and of itself, especially Solana. Solana has, I think, been one of the most hardest hits alts throughout this entire bear market with the non-stop onslaught of FUD. But it's still here, man. And, all of us on RareFUD are kind of, we don't want to say Solana maxi because we dabble in other things, but we're extremely bullish on the future of Solana. So seeing that pump close back to 20s as well is very optimistic. So, man, on the market side, on the coin side of things, I'm feeling hella good. On the NFT side, kind of worried because anytime we see pumps in the market, we usually see NFTs pull back. It hasn't been too severe on Solana just because we had that drop from 21, 22 to 15. NFTs kind of stabled out in there, I guess, still kind of stable. And on the Ordinal side of things, I don't think we've really seen too much of a pullback, specifically in OMB. But BRC-20s did take a little hit, but that's been a couple months ago. So I want to see how they bounce back from here as well.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen over on the Ordinal side of things, just because I do think, I talked about this a lot on Spaces, over the past week or so, that we're going to see a lot of these. I mean, Easy mentioned it on his show. I'll mention it again. There was more mints coming out than buyers in the market. And I think that's just going to, that's the gold rush effect, right? Like Ordinals was very new, attracting a lot of the late grifters and everything like that. And now we're going to see a consolidation into the projects that are actually trying to push cool shit and know what they're talking about. So it's exciting. I mean, it's definitely exciting. Joe, how are we feeling about the market before we enter in our guest?
Hey guys, I'm sorry if you can hear the road here. I'm pretty close today, but yeah, man, I'm feeling great about the market. I don't want to tap myself on the shoulder, but I've been playing BTC to the T with my spot positions as well as Ethereum. And I just started to slowly pull some profits from ETH and BTC back to SOL. If you look at the pairing, it is down to like where a triple bottom would form on both pairings for ETH and BTC. And like Dorian mentioned, SOL has been suppressed so hard. It has had two black swan events within itself, and it's hold a higher low double bottom structure on the macro. So really, man, I'm looking right now to kind of funnel slowly while BTC dominance creeps up to that 60%. to get back into my ETH and Sol positions. And then from there, I'll play NFTs along the chop after we get a nice pump, profit-taking chop. Same thing, right? Nothing changes. It's cyclical in nature, like we always talk about. So, but for me right now, I'm loving the pump on BTC. I'm going to slowly take some profits back into my favorite alts. And yeah, just play the game like I always do, man. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the market. Like I said before, guys, right? Before the pump, we talked about how this is the most exciting part of the market when no one's talking about everything. Everybody's scared. Everybody's gone.
Mhm.
Those are the time where you build your positions to make money, right? Because if you're FOMOing in at 30,000 now, you're going to get chopped because market makers are here to stop hunt you now. So that's the thing, man. It's really trusting your gut and your conviction. And that's what makes the 99% fail, is that they look towards others and don't trust their self and their own introspections about their investors' thesis, right? So yeah, that's a long story short. I'm excited about the market and where we're at, B.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Let's bring on our guest for today. Big name over in the market. If you guys don't know, you're about to know. Let's bring on BitGod to the show.
Yo,
BitGod, how we
hear me?
doing today? Oh yeah, we
Yo.
can absolutely
Hey.
hear you.
Loud and
I'm
clear.
doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me on RareFUD, of course. I'm looking forward to this great pod. Thank you, guys.
No,
Thank you.
dude. We appreciate the time.
Mhm.
I don't even know where to start. Let's start with you, BitGod, because your
Yep.
rise. I remember, and I don't know how much you watched the show, but we actually had one of our friends on, Manny, who's been heavily involved. He was showing us on Ordinals like ages ago and was like, "You guys are gonna miss this if you guys don't get in now." And you know, he was on the forefront, you know, along with like ZK and yourself and everything. He actually introduced us to your Twitter account. And when we were looking at it, I was looking back at the VOD, and you were at 10,000 followers. You are now closing in on what, like 140K, 150K?
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, listen,
Within a couple of
it's
weeks.
great that you. Yeah, I mean, I think that the majority of growth, right, came over 2 or 3 weeks. But I mean, shout out Manny though. Honestly, Manny was in our first ever redacted town hall yesterday. You know, we had, I think, a little over 200 people in there for the first one. We're still trying to figure out all the Discord issues for OXBT holders, but man, it was amazing. You know, we had a lot of great questions. Manny, of course, came up to the stage. He's been a big supporter of ours since day one. And so, you know, really do appreciate Manny in general, I guess, you know, giving you guys the alpha at 10K.
Yeah.
I mean, it was wild to see this sort of growth, of course. I mean, you know, I think was right place, right time, had worked my ass off. And, you know, as we still are, but, you know, wanted to sort of make a difference. And I think that we've definitely sort of done that.
Absolutely. I mean, you 100% have. And I think I think it just kind of showed the growth power and the growth sector that is Ordinals and BRC-20s. I guess they're kind of, you know, asymmetrical, or not asymmetrical, but go hand in hand. It's kind of crazy to see the growth. Let's talk through it though, because you've been exploring this for a while, and I know ZK was talking about how you were going to be like this absolute superstar on the forefront of everything back when you only had like, you know, 1,000 followers, if that. Talk us through that relationship, because you and ZK have been pretty close for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, listen, a lot of people, you know, when I think it's almost exactly 3 months that I got into Ordinals, right? I think it was like March 20th was my first ever day. I think that this account was created on around that sort of day as well. He was one of the first people I looked up to, right? ZK, you know, Leonidas, you know, some of these other, you know, sort of main, you know, Udi, of course, from Taproot Wizard, some of these really main names in Ordinals. And ZK was, and I'm not saying sort of like Leonidas or any of those others sort of faded me, right? It was just like they were less, I think, less willing to sort of chat, I think, in the early days, as you should with, you know, some random that comes out of nowhere, you know, and sort of like asking to get into Ordinals, asking to figure stuff out. ZK was one of the first people that, you know, I think answered and had a little fun chat with at the beginning. And then he was one of the first people I ever actually met in person under sort of BitGod, right? I met him at NFT NYC. Right at the Taproot Wizards party, when I think again I was under 1,000 followers, and you know he was one of the first people really willing to meet me out of anyone that I knew, and so that was sort of the first piece of the relationship. As time would go on, I think post NFT NYC I would actually go to Asia, and sort of be over there during during 2020 craze, and then I would go on from there to Dubai. sort of that would be the sort of rounded out to my trip in the other side of the world. And that was when everything started to really kick off, right? It was 2 or 3K followers at that point. I started to tease something on the BRC-20 side, and it sort of took off. And that whole entire, I think, week to week and a half, I was in Dubai. You know, I got like no sleep. You know, there was so much going on. I think at one point, honestly, too, like I was just alone in Dubai, right? I was traveling alone for some work stuff, and you know, lost just basically sleep. I think there was one day after not sleeping at all for like 4 days and gaining, you know, about like, I don't know, 10 to 20K followers, that like my body just shut down. I don't know if anyone's done that before, but like my body was just, I was ready to throw up. I was ready to just pass out, and finally did. It got like 6 hours of sleep or so. And, you know, of course, through all of that, one of the sort of best friends I had was ZK, right? He was there for sort of anything I needed. And then, you know, the reason I sort of bring this up is after all of that, right? After the trip ended in Dubai, I flew to Miami, right? For Bitcoin Miami, I guess at the beginning of May or I forget when that, or I guess mid-May. And of course, from there, we had a long dinner together, just sort of one-on-one dinner, and just connected more. And I think I've just gotten close from there, and just have a lot of respect for, of course, what he did, both him and Chartfu, of course, some of the OGs in all of Ordinals. So yeah, I think, listen, like ZK was a big part of a lot of the decisions, and just a good friend to sort of lean on for anything, and it's just been supportive of us every step of the way, and vice versa as well. I think what he's doing is amazing.
Absolutely, dude. And I see that symbiotic relationship. I think the nice thing about, you know, the people who are at the forefront, the people who have like the massive respect and massive followings over on Ordinals, is that you guys all seem so real, like authentic, like you actually care about what's going on in Ordinals, and how do we progress it, and how do we make this, you know, like not just a cool niche, but something that is accessible to a lot of people. So it's been beautiful to see. I guess my first big question for you is why Ordinals? You know, what got you in there? What was like the main attraction point that 3 months ago you're like, that's it, I'm head first going into it?
Yeah. So I've told this story a couple times, but maybe going back a little bit before that, right? Because I had the opportunity to probably be in Ordinals previous to March 20th or so. But to this story, right, in I think late January, someone had sent in one of these random chats like we all have on Telegram and Discord and stuff. They sent in their Bitcoin NFTs, and then they just did a mic drop emoji. And I was like, you know, what the hell is this? And so I asked them for a link. They would send me to a site called generative.xyz. And I still don't necessarily know what they do, but ultimately, like, you went to that website and it was like Bitcoin NFTs, but you connected a MetaMask. And I'm like, this isn't Bitcoin NFTs. And so from there, I basically instantly faded it. You know, I was like, all right, this isn't. And so I didn't even look into it really much at all after that. Continued on. And then ultimately what I saw was 2 months later, right, March 20th or so, or in and around that date, Magic Eden would launch on Bitcoin. And as soon as I saw that on my timeline, I was like, wait a minute, there's something here. Went to the website. I would then go to the Connect Wallet feature again, right? I was like, oh, please don't give me fucking MetaMask again, because I'll leave. So they didn't, of course, you know, they gave you 3 options. They recommended Xverse though. And as soon as I saw the coupling of Xverse and Magic Eden, I was like, this is like fucking Solana. You know, and so as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, there's something here. Started to really build a thesis, and basically went all in at that point. You know, it was like, because it's like, to me, it was like, this isn't just another blockchain, right? Like this is Bitcoin, right? It's not like I was trying to go to like Sui or something,
right?
You know, this is another block. This is sort of like Daddy Bitcoin that's been around for 13 years. People already know what Bitcoin is. You know, there's not that much friction, right? You can buy Bitcoin on basically every single exchange in the world. And the experience was very similar to Solana. I'm like, okay, this to me is sort of a no-brainer. So that's my initiation story.
Yeah, dude, like I completely agree with you. I remember when Ordinals first came out, people were fading it, and it just made no sense to me. Like, how are you fading the #1 blockchain? Like, what? Zero logic. So my question for you is, how did you stumble? Because at the time, it seemed like you came around Ordinals and came around the time where inscriptions were really starting to pop off. What made you focus on BRC-20s first over going what the primary trend was?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started out, absolutely, it was mostly ordinals, right? It was not BRC-20s, right? Because the BRC-20s came out March 9th, I guess, right? I did not mint any ordi, right? I didn't have the luck there, but I think what would happen is about a month later or so, right? You get to the end of April, and there was this bit of a lull period on the JPEG side for ordinals, right? Floor prices were sort of trending in the wrong direction, right? They were not sort of course, going up, but to the marketing was not so great. I think there was in general like just some not so great sentiment on the JPEG side, right, in ordinals, and so I think like myself and I think many others, we started to look at BRC-20s because of how cheap it was to mint stuff. The sort of thesis there was like, okay, if this stuff ever does take off, you're okay with taking $5 to $10 to $20 risk on a single ticker. And so I think like myself and many others, we just started to mint the fuck out of anything we found to be memeable, right? Meme and pizza and just any ticker that sounded memeable, we started to sort of mint. And so as time went on, though, I started to get more into BRC-20s, understand some of the stuff behind it, and started to really build a thesis for, okay, I believe I can sort of build something here. With sort of BRC-20 as the first step, and then a number of other things sort of post that. But that's how it ultimately started. I think it was really late April.
Yeah, I the funny thing with BRC-20s is like I looked at it. It wasn't so much that I faded ordinals or BRC-20s. It was more so like I was so laser focused on our own project with Heist over on Solana, and like I sat there and I looked at it. I was like, this is literally a line of fucking code. Like, how is this going to have any value? And I think it was when we talked to Manny, and he's like, dude, what's the value of these ERC-20 tokens? Like, memes have like culture, and there's velocity that goes behind it. And I think that's why I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Like, who actually uses the smart contracts of the ERC-20 or anything like that? But nobody cares. They're just like, does price go up or down? And I think
also to this point too is I was generally bullish on fungible tokens on Bitcoin. And that at that time, I was like seeing and understanding ERC-20s, right? Like fungibles, in my opinion, were some sort of next step, right? Because we had started with JPEGs on Bitcoin, which was sort of a reversal, right? We saw in 2016, 2017, it was all focused on just ERC-20s. Then you could actually do shit with it in DeFi summer. And then of course, JPEGs in 2020 into 2021, really, it was a reversal. And so it was like, okay, we're starting with JPEGs here, but ultimately the thesis is I'm generally bullish on fungibles on Bitcoin. And at that time, mid-April to late April, there was no other standard, right? It was only BRC-20. And then I think obviously as traction continued to build, as there was rumors of BRC-20s being added to centralized exchanges, of course, other people started to try and build fungible token standards. But I think at that time, to me, it was sort of already over. Like BRC-20 had been submitted as the potential sort of winner there just because of network effects. But that was my general thesis is like, fungible tokens on Bitcoin were going to be big at some point. Of course, I never knew it would be this quick, but yeah, that was the general thesis there.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of where we decided, like, yes, there's velocity here. And I think the big thing with BRC-20s is, this is just a start, right? Like, you're getting in at ground zero, and 99.9% of the shit's going to zero, especially with how easy it was to make these tickers on, anything like, why am I blanking out on the market?
Unisat.
Thank you so much. I was looking at I was like, it's not Ord. That's Leonidas' thing, but yes, Unisat. So yeah, if you go over there, I mean, like we saw it. Literally, we made the RareFUD ticker, and Manny's like, I got you guys, but it was so easy, and you're like, okay, this is way too easy. It removes the friction. That's the whole, like that barrier to entry was almost like a feature for BRC-20s and Ordinals at the start, and now it's just so easy. But I think the next wave of hype and speculation is just that. Like, what is this going to turn into? And if we do hit, let's say we do 100 tickers, if we find the one ticker that found the war chest and, actually has the money to do something cool with it, what's going to be the next Ord.io? What's going to be the next, like DeFi on Bitcoin? What's going to be, the next protocol layer? And so I think it's just exciting. And then, now you have OXBT. Let's talk about OXBT and what it's going to lead to and what you guys kind of have planned for it. Obviously you keep your speculation because it's always good to weaponize that and keep it for marketing. But general thesis, what was the thought process behind it?
Yeah, so I mean, the mission was very clear, right? The mission for OXBT was to sort of onboard, educate, and entertain. That was what the whole sort of mission was behind that, with a couple of goals as well, right? One of those was to have the most holders of any BRC-20, and so the mechanism behind that was, of course, making it a smaller amount for how much you were minting, plus a larger supply. And then the other piece was the other goal was to break Bitcoin, right? And somewhat we accomplished that specific goal, which was there was 3 or 4 blocks that were only OXBT mints. So some would say that we somewhat did, but that was the ultimate sort of mission for OXBT, and I think that we really did accomplish that, right? I think that you see the people that minted at mint day, you see the people that are part of the community. Many of them are telling us, hey, like OXBT was the first ever ordinal I did, or sort of anything Bitcoin related in the ecosystem because of what you guys did. And I think that was sort of akin to the marketing and the relationships we had previous to that, and the buy-in, of course, not only from outside players, right, outside of Bitcoin, but also the support of some of the most OG sort of ordinals guys as well that really helped us. And I think that we built we did the groundwork, right? We built the foundation previous to ever launching OXBT that I think has given us the sort of launchboard to do stuff into the future. But that was the ultimate goal of OXBT, and I think we've ultimately accomplished that. And now yesterday we put out the sort of vision side of things of the future. But I'm happy to talk about as well, like at least on the OXBT side, more of the stuff going on there and being explored.
Yes, please. Let's dive right into it. Real quick, Dor, do you have a question before we dive into it?
Or more like a comment. I do want to commend BitGod on like the launch of OXBT. Like, I know you were getting a lot of slack from delaying it, but your launch was the best launch I've had on BRC-20. Like, after you, every other launch after that was not good, and you could see how much time you and effort you guys put into it. So, and another thing on OXBT regarding when you're like, oh, we broke Bitcoin. Yeah, the mempool was only full of OXBT transactions. And one thing that I learned, because I never really used Bitcoin before, Ordinals or BRC-20 tokens, but it was interesting to me that the fees were still substantially lower than ETH if you had that same amount of volume on it. Like, I mean, yeah, you could pay $17, $18 for transactions, but to have that much volume going on the chain at that one time and transactions at max $20, like, I'm not complaining. I'll take that every day.
100%.
No, 100%.
Yeah,
no, and I completely agree.
I share that like sentiment so hard. The thing with ETH is, and we've been saying this ever since Ordinals came out. Like, we got receipts about 2-3 months ago when the hype really started to culminate. Is we think Solana is going to tackle more of like we see compression NFTs and what they're doing over there. Like, we have the Faceless, which just came out with the 350K NFT collection, drip, and all the cool stuff. I think they're going to tackle the scalability side of things. Not saying Bitcoin can't, but what Bitcoin's going to do is it's going to target more the ETH side of things. Like, it is, to me, it is, I love the fee structure more. I like the interface more. Like, it's already, Xverse is a way better wallet than, most of the stuff I can find over on ETH. And it's targeting that luxury, NFT sort of feel. We already see it with OMB, with BTC gods, with Bitcoin bandits and all the like. This is where I think it's exciting. And it's, I'd be scared if I was a ETH maxi or anything like that on the NFT side of things. But let's dive into the vision for OXBT, what you got with redacted and everything.
Yeah, so I think that it's crucial to sort of set up this stuff in the right sort of vein, right? So how we look at it right now is sort of redacted is our sort of Yuga, right? That is our sort of top level, sort of company that then allows us to do a number of different things and push, sort of different brands and narratives and projects, all that sort of stuff under that. And sort of OXBT is just one of those pieces, right? And so I think to the OXBT side of things, it's something we touched on a lot yesterday of I was trying to be as transparent as possible on this side for stuff that we've been experimenting with that are sort of working on. But I want to touch on that, right? So on the DEX side, right? There is, in particular, one DEX that we're sort of excited about on the Bitcoin side that is Bitcoin native. It's called OmniSats. And that is going to be a Bitcoin native BRC-20 swap with pools as well. Hopefully, they eventually integrate the BRC-20 stablecoin that's coming from Stably, which would provide some more sort of everyday use cases. Second is we are going cross-chain, right? So that is something that we sort of announced, I think, yesterday. That is probably coming up. I'm giving liberal estimates to a lot of this stuff so that the people who we're working with, are actually able to execute on it. But it's sort of Emblem Vault we should be working with Emblem Vault. It's only going to be Ordi and OXBT going cross-chain with Emblem Vault. So you'll be able to, of course, sell into and place bids on something like Blur. Of course, it'll be on OpenSea as well. But opening up more sort of liquidity here and more, I think the way it's currently trading in Unisat and others is more like an NFT rather than some sort of fungible. So this is something we're incredibly excited about. I think that should be out in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but a liberal estimate is more like 4 weeks, under 4 weeks. The other side is the centralized exchange side. So there's a couple pieces here. One is the staking side. Right, so OKX released their sort of experimental standard of BRC-30, which has now been changed the name to BRC-20s, that we are exploring. I think the mechanisms behind it are a bit primitive, but we're definitely exploring the staking side of things. That is something I think that people were like super excited about yesterday. It's something that we're taking very seriously. And if it doesn't make sense to us, if it doesn't make sense to ultimately like OKX, then we need to rethink things. And so it's something that we're definitely exploring. Wanted to be as transparent as possible on that. I think also to the centralized exchange side, right? So Binance is we were on their space last week. We've been generally chatting with them, have a lot of support for them. OKX, of course, as well. The Binance side, they're probably launching their BRC-20, Ordinals trading, just like OKX, of course, just like we're listed on OKX for their Ordinals side of things. But their BRC-20 support centralized exchange side is probably not for another 1 to 2 to 3 months. That's sort of the rumors, especially with the lawsuits going on. Who knows if that pushes back timelines more. And then lastly is to the market making side, right? So I think we should be one of the first ever BRC-20s with a market maker. We've received sort of a couple offers on that side and should be, just working out the granular side of things for that. And then really lastly is the experiments going on, right? So, we really are trying to push as much as possible. What can you actually do with OXBT, right? And so not only, of course, for anything we have upcoming, but, proof of concepts type stuff, right? So we've been this week, we're going to do, I think, 3 total raffles, right? All in OXBT. Next week is going to be the start of auctions, the first ever BRC-20 auctions for some really nice pieces as well. And then I think what you can expect from that is again, like it's really just a proof of concept for what season 0 is, which is a combination of not only our own stuff, but, highly curated potential pieces as well as tech, as well as a number of different things. But that's just a little bit of alpha there.
Dude, a little bit. What are you talking about a little bit?
That was like a stream of it, dog.
Bro, that was mainlining alpha right there. There's a lot to break down over there. I love that. I was going to ask if the Binance situation was kind of obfuscating some of the timelines. It sounds like it will, which is to be expected, right? You got to worry about that first before you can continue to operate. That again, at the beginning of the show, it smells fishy, dude. Something about that lawsuit just doesn't sit right with me. At the same time, there's a lot to break down. So DEX, first off, huge. I think
massive, dude.
Yeah, because Unisat for us, for anybody who was more akin to NFTs and stuff. I love the fact that I can kind of, we talked about it with Manny, was corner boying is kind of like breaking it into little dime bags of OXBT and dropping it in different price points. Sometimes for a premium, and then if you want to unload your bag at a higher price or chop it up into bigger blocks, you can. For me, it was kind of fun that way, but at the same time, I knew that wasn't going to be scalable. So with a DEX, you have much more streamlined liquidity and how it exchanges hands. And for a lot of people, that's probably the barrier to entry of, hey, I'm going to absolutely ape into this. So I think that's going to be massive just alone. And then we're talking about OK Exchange and everything like that. Dude, it's holy shit.
There's a lot coming, dude.
We've been working on a lot.
Yeah, to say the least, man. You're really on the forefront of tech innovation right now, and it's pretty insane. Like, one of the big drivers of ETH was the smart contract compatibility. But if you're able to, and what you're working on is, I don't know if it's necessarily smart contracts, but allowing fungible tokens that are trading at like NFTs now to actually be traded as tokens to increase that liquidity. Man, it's just setting a new paradigm, in my opinion.
100%.
Completely agree. And there's also like, I left out one piece. There's also another large marketplace on Ordinals that will be doing BRC-20 trading soon. And I'm looking forward to that as well. That experience should be closer to a DEX as well.
Okay.
Hey.
Cool. Well,
right.
We'll leave a little bit of hidden alpha there. That's exciting as well. I mean, it sounds like a lot of players, and the beauty of BRC-20s and Ordinals is that they're all fair launches, and I think that's like, to me, one of the biggest value premises, especially getting into it, was fun, dude. If I was trying to mint a token, it was like, oh, I got to fast gas this and, or fast sat it, customize, how many sats I was going to put into the mempool and try to speed run this real quick. If it's getting close to 70%, holy shit, I got to go. And it was fun, but it was fair. It was fair for everybody. And I think how you did the OXBT launch, like Dor said, was a masterstroke. Like, I think it was just everybody had an incredible experience. And if that's your onboarding point, like, that's how many people got into, Bitcoin exposure. And like Dor was saying, you didn't really use Bitcoin before, like
never, dude.
He wasn't a 16, 17 guy, sort of class or anything where, Bitcoin was all hail Bitcoin. And that was like a big entry point for a lot of people. But I think
that to this precise point, right? Like, the whole minting experience is this is what you can ultimately expect from us, from anything that we do in the future, right? Is the high attention to detail, making it as simple as possible, right? Making it native. That is what you can ultimately expect from us when we do anything in the future, right? It requires a little bit more sleepless nights, but at the end of the day, right? Like, this is what people want. They want it to be different. They want it to be unique. They want it to have attention to detail, and they want it to be, of course, as simple as possible. And I think that's just something you're seeing missing, I think, from many other mints that are ongoing, right? Is like, they just don't have that, I think, longer term view, right? It's like, oh, this is just a fad. This is just a fucking mint, fuck it. But like, everything matters, I think, from these podcasts to the one-on-one calls to the spaces, that type of experience is what people want, and they're willing to potentially pay for as well.
No, I completely agree with you, man. And one thing that a lot of projects that lack these attention to detail is the ones who don't plan to be around for a while. I usually don't. I'm very meticulous about projects I pick up or BRC-20s. I'm not chasing after everything. There's so much crap that goes out there. Most of it's going to zero. So I'm not running around. It's like, my time is too valuable to be running around chasing after everything. So my thing is identify the solid stuff, pick a bunch of it up, and hold on for a bit. And that's what I did with OMB, OXBT, and a lot of stuff over on Sol. So so the lack of care from people, they're just trying to catch along the narrative wave. But most of these BRC-20s that we see out today, they're not going to exist in a month.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Let's touch on another point too that you brought up, talking about staking and BRC-20s, right? I think this is way bigger than a lot of people are expecting, because Bitcoin is a proof of work chain, right? And so we don't really have any sort of staking protocol per se, unless you're going through maybe like a vault or something like that with some entities that are since downfallen. But yeah, I mean, like, Bitcoin staking, essentially, like, this is basically a staking protocol that you're trying to push onto Bitcoin and like a different layer. I think that is so cool. And we don't know what it's going to yield, right? Like, we don't know where it's going to go, but that's the whole point of it, is we're just trying to explore the possibilities. And from there, with staking, then we can start integrating it with DEXs and, adding in those layers. It's very nuanced, but extremely exciting.
Yeah, I think in general to this, right, is I've been telling a couple of my friends who are more on the DeFi side, just spread out across crypto, and like, they're like, what does Bitcoin need? And I'm like, Bitcoin needs TVL, right?
Yeah.
It does not have any of that right now. And so I think that, if you want liquidity to stay here, if you want more and more liquidity, right, you need to offer some sort of yield. I have seen on Stacks, right? I think it's called Bitflow Finance. They're trying to offer yield. It's sort of like similar to GMX, right, on Arbitrum, where you're earning, you're earning sustainable yield that's based on the fees generated from that exchange, right? And so they're trying to do like Bitcoin yield. And so I think that stuff like that is sustainable, is something that you could offer. But the problem is, of course, it's on Stacks, right? And like you have to get over there, and the experience, there's too much friction. And so if we can figure out a way to do it on the base layer, right, that would be amazing. And I'm of course all for that. So hopefully that gets figured out over these next couple of years, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, one of the things that for me that I'm most excited about Bitcoin is that you can do things with it now. I came into Bitcoin in crypto in 2020 during DeFi summer. So it's like interacting with all these different protocols and earning yield and providing liquidity farms. It's like, it was a blast. And I didn't really have that experience on Bitcoin. That's why I really didn't touch it. And then I got sucked into NFTs. At the time, I did not have a lot of liquidity to be able to dabble into ETH. And with our gas fees being up $400 for transactions at once, it was just way too much for me. And then I found Solana, and just being able to do things on chain other than just holding the coin really incentivized me to spend a lot of time here. And that's my bullish case for Bitcoin and Ordinals and BRC-20s and everything that's being developed now. As these more developed and potentially DeFi, who knows what's going to happen in the future. But as there becomes more things to increase TVL on the chain, I think more liquidity will become more active in Bitcoin rather than just sit and hold. And another bullish case is that Bitcoin is the most accessible crypto out of anything else out there. Most of the people that I talk to don't know anything other than Bitcoin. They never heard of Solana. They haven't even heard of ETH. So the fact that they at least heard or know of Bitcoin is bullish. You can access Bitcoin from most platforms. So as things develop and friction is reduced, Bitcoin's only going to continue to gain more, I guess, capital of the market.
Yep. It is. It's true. Okay, I have a couple questions for you, BitGod, because you are way smarter on this front than we are. What's the difference between BRC-20 and like bit stamps or whatever they were called before?
Or bitmaps?
Not bitmap. I know that's the new thing, right? But they used to be called stamps. What was it on? It wasn't just it was like
stamps, right? It's like another. So I never really looked too much into stamps for this main reason, right? Is this goes back to ultimately my story to even why I'm in Bitcoin, right? I'm a big UI UX maxi. I'm a big friction guy. Like, how much friction is there to get into something? And if there isn't much, and if I believe the sort of opportunity is large enough, right, then it's probably a good sort of play. The problem with stamps was, I think they've reduced the friction now. But the problem with stamps when it originally started was it was way too fucking difficult to get into, right? They were using this one wallet was being pushed the most. It was called, I think it was called like Free Wallet, I believe. And you go to that website. As soon as I went to that website, I was like, oh, I'm done. I literally faded it, right? Like literally because of that.
This is it.
And I think as time went on, you sort of see the projects that were built there. You see the type of people that I saw sort of pushing it. It just left a really bad stain on it. I think Hero Wallet, right, which is another one of the Ordinals wallets that's pretty popular, started to support stamps, maybe making the friction just easier. But I think in general, right, like my biggest problem ultimately was the friction early on, and it just has never caught on, I think, in terms of like user buy-in because of that. And you only get a certain opportunity to really, I think, like show an experience is good, is right, is differentiated, is and like they just missed that, I think, entirely. Yeah, and now I think I don't see anyone talking about stamps. I could be wrong though, right? You got like SRC-20.
That's right.
You got stamps.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I was trying to think of what it was. I was like, it's not BTS 20 or whatever. It's SRC 20. That's right. Okay. I just want to know the
Yep.
the difference, because when I first got into Ordinals, it was maybe check out stamps, and I was like, dude, they don't have people like the BitGods, the ZKs, the Leonidases, and I saw the people that were pushing them. It's kind of the same thing where UI UX was bad. Let's jump into a couple of other questions. One is, you guys know way more than I do about recursive. I now see recursive punks. I see recursive shrooms. What is recursive, and what do you see as it being an aid towards OXBT, and what you guys are planning to do with Redacted?
Yeah, I think to this question, we have not solidified how necessarily Recursion will play into that. Although before Recursion was ever launched or sort of released to the public, we had chatted with, because as we of course started to go down the rabbit hole of, okay, we ultimately do want to do something in the future on the Ordinal side. How do we make this cost effective for ourselves as well as end users? And you just look at what it would cost to inscribe a really nice, PFP that was done really well. Art is nice. It's high res, all that sort of stuff. It would probably cost, just ourselves or the end user $100 to $200 to $300. And that's not even, that's just going to Bitcoin, right? That's not going to us. That's not going to any collection owner. So that's a problem. Maybe some people don't look at that as a problem, but that's obviously a problem, especially for larger collections. And so when we started to look at that, we were sort of looking with a buddy that has another collection, and they had been talking about Recursion. They weren't calling it Recursion at the time. They were just basically saying, listen, there's this opportunity where you can take the layers of a sort of image, break those up, of course, because you're in Photoshop. Of course, everything has layers. And then, of course, as you sort of, then, of course, what you need from there is a generator to bring those together in some sort of larger collection that would make the cost reduce the cost by 100x or so, right? And so that was particularly interesting to us. And then, of course, there's now a whole standard around it that makes it 10 times easier for anyone to do it. What we were planning on doing was if that was the method we were going to use, eventually open sourcing that, right? I think almost something similar to like a Zuki, right? Where with their contract, they would go, they would open source it, and now the majority of people on ETH use that smart contract for the optimizations around gas that they made. So that's the way we were looking at it. I think, though, to this point, I strongly believe that Recursion is sort of the next meta.
Yeah.
I think that you've gone through a number of these different metas, right? You've gone through BRC-20, which I think will not that it'll never be around, but I think is people are just figuring out different shit, trying different shit, and there'll be a couple different things that I think people really love the most. BRC-20, I believe, will be a part of that. But then you've gone on to rare sats and uncommon sats. Now I think you're sort of still in this little bitmap sort of meta.
Yep.
And then lastly, I think coming up is, I think, really Recursion. The thing, though, with it is you need, I think, more accessibility, right? You need the friction layers to be reduced, right? Currently, you got Recursion Punk, some of these other collections that are almost, the way that they're doing is akin to like the early days of Ordinals, right? Is they're setting it all up themselves. What you need is these launch pads. What you need is like we were talking about, is you need a generator, right? To where, okay, you have all these different traits, you have all these different sort of layers that you do want to inscribe. Let's generate them, right? Let's make it so that there is a sort of truly random PFP that you're getting in sort of the future. And so I think that I'm sure Magic Eden, I'm sure a bunch of other people are working on this for their launchpad. But that's what I expect, Recursion to really take off, because it does reduce the costs. Yep. It also increases, I think, creativity. And that's a great place to be in.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to the future of that.
Definitely. When I saw recursive inscriptions come up, I thought it was pretty groundbreaking. And just because the expansion beyond the 4 megabyte limit that you have per sat is insane. For example, I was talking to Adam Ape. He's a well-known artist on Solana, came out with an ETH project called Arnpaul Gang, and his project involves a lot of video motion. So his stuff is always animated.
Yep.
So I was like, hey man, are you thinking about launching something on Ordinals? He's like, I wouldn't mind, but I really like to do something animated. So when I saw this, I instantly thought of him. I'm like, boom. It's like now that you can break up your entire image into multiple sats and go beyond that 4 megabyte limit, you can start doing things that would have normally been unable to do on Bitcoin. It goes
Yep.
far beyond just generative collections too. I heard that you can actually
Yeah.
like create programs to run on Bitcoin. Like you can have your own Bitcoin node run on Bitcoin. So it's pretty nuts the things that this tech allows you to do on Bitcoin.
No, yeah, I think that I was just touching on one, like both you and I have just been touching on one potential application of this, but I think that's what's so exciting is everyone is continuing to experiment on this. You can do code, you can do text file, like there's so many different things, and like I don't know, figuring out how to do something with that with OXBT, right? Like, is there a way to do something recursive with OXBT? Setting up some sort of terminal. I don't know. I think that it's something that we're absolutely exploring, but there is so much open field here for recursive as well as just anything on Ordinals. Like since day one, it's still open field, and I think that's a thing with a lot of people. They're like, oh, is it too early or am I too late? And it's like, no, I mean, this is we're 6 months in. There's still so much to be figured out. There's still so much going on, so it's incredibly fun.
It is, and I think that's one of the reasons I'm personally so bullish on like OXBT and what you guys are doing over there, is because you guys have the foresight of, we're not just launching a collection, we'll hold back supply and we'll just dump on the people for exit liquidity, because that's how you make money in Bitcoin in the short term, right? Is like you have to hold back supply because you guys don't have royalties or anything like that. You guys don't have, those funds aren't going to you, they're going to Bitcoin, and so it's kind of tough unless you mint it yourself and then people buy it from you. So it's tough to find the revenue, but I think you guys are building out the platforms that, if you do this right, it's the Madkins of the world, it's OXBT and what you guys are doing with Redacted, it's OMB, Bitcoin Bandits, everything like that. What you guys are doing now, may not make sense, for the short-sighted people, but if you have any sort of long-term vision for this, it could be massively potential. I mean, like, oh my goodness, you guys could set up the platform that everybody uses for Ordinals moving forward, and I think that's the what gets me going at the end of the day. And so I ignored like the short-term price pumps and ebbs and flows, and like you just hold on to your bag. And if you want to trade it, I mean, I always tell people, keep a stack of 50% of your supply and make your money. Go ahead and do your thing, boo-boo. Nobody went broke taking profits, but you got to hold on to that bag. I just think this is still so early, and what you guys are trying to do is nothing short of incredible. Let's talk about bitmaps though, because you did bring it up, and I think this between bitmaps and recursion is like I'm starting to see the vision of what Ordinals is going to be, right? And what the potential is over there. But what is bitmaps? I'm stupid. I know nothing about it. Like at its core, what is bitmaps?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm guessing Dorian could probably do a better sort of explanation of it. Here's my ultimate problem is basically since Mint, right? There's now been, multiple different metas, right, of OXBT. But my, of course, workload has gotten, I think, larger and larger, right? We've now expanded the team a little bit, of course, on the Discord side. And then there's also been a couple things for me where people have asked me to, have sort of like given me whitelist for their collection. And of course, then I've taken that opportunity to, of course, mint. And then there's been a couple times where that has been, produced some outsized returns, and I would ultimately like to sell. But those sort of collection founders got really, really pissed and, started to sell shame. And so I basically was like, for all of the times that's happened, I'm just like, all right, listen, give me your address. I'll send this shit back. And sort of you just send me the Bitcoin back, I guess. You know what I mean? And so it's left a really sour taste in my mouth when doing anything, unfortunately, on Ordinals. And so I've seen a couple things where, like, on Twitter now, people are like, follow these people for the best alpha on Ordinals. I'm probably the worst person now, especially because of how sort of like tight we need to be with anything we're putting out, as well as interacting with, all that sort of stuff is needs to be very, very thoughtful. And so I'm probably the worst person now. I've checked out bitmaps a little bit. I checked it out a little bit this morning as well. It seems to me that it's sort of trying to push this metaverse-esque side of things on Bitcoin. I think that could have some legs. The .name stuff is interesting too. I think in general though, you're always going to see with anything that's created, right? Like .btc, .sats are probably going to accrue the most value. You're always going to have other distractions like .xbt, whatever the fuck. But at the same time, like there's only a few that really capture the majority of value just because of attention, just because of communities and like how that all works. So I don't know, this .bitmap stuff seems cool. Dorian, I don't know if you want to touch on it more.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure of a lot of the stuff behind it. Just that it maybe has some sort of metaverse-like.
So
qualities.
I think you did an amazing job explaining it because you know more about it than me. Bitmaps was one of those things. I was just like, I ain't would paying attention to this, man.
I know.
Well, it's kind of like the ENS craze in my eyes, right? Like, and I just never got involved. Like, I was over on Ethereum when that whole craze. It was a couple of waves, right? It was a few times that they just automatically popped off, and people were trying to go for triple digits, quad digits, and trying to get certain base C numbers and everything like that. And you're like, bro, what? Nobody cares. At the end of the day, it's just a craze. And I can see bitmaps being cool in the sense that it's just like ENS, right? Like, I'm not going to pay an exorbitant amount for it, but yeah, I can see the value in a small, meaningful way down the line. But it's just gonna do it. Sometimes we just get over speculative on some of this shit, and it's just like, what? Like, you're missing the point.
Why? Yeah, dude, it's like one of those things. It's like short term. Like, don't get me wrong, there is money to be made. I'm not gonna stop anybody saying, "Oh, this is stupid." No, just because I don't think it's the best thing you can be doing with your time doesn't mean you can't make a buttload of money. Like, I know people who printed off of getting into bitmaps early, but for me, it's just not something I wanted to dedicate my time to.
100%. Yep.
Yeah, I think in general, right, people are going to, like I was saying a little bit ago, like people are because it is so early, because there's so much open field, and because of how different, of course, Bitcoin is to anything people have really explored on before. There is so many different things that I think people want to try out. It gets a little traction, and then it sort of goes from there, and it probably doesn't have too many legs. It's just people that are, of course, trying to speculate on whatever the next thing is. And I suspect that we do something like that over this next year or so, because of how different you can get. And like you're even seeing it in a lot of this like rare sat stuff, like uncommon sats, some of these other like different sats that people are inscribing on are not necessarily that rare when you look at the overall numbers of how many of those type of sats are out there.
Yeah.
So it's just pushing, I think, something that is not necessarily rare or shouldn't be probably more pushed than it is, but of course, because of the overall market, it sounds great, it looks great. And so, fuck it, let's just push it. I don't know. It's always going to happen in any market.
100%. I feel like, with Ordinals and the history of Bitcoin, especially, we come up with these speculative terms sometimes and oversaturate those speculative terms, like the rare sats. Like, there are rare sats, right? And then there's like, okay, are we really calling this a rare sat? Oh, now we're calling it uncommon. Oh, what are we going to do? Start having legendary and mythic sats too? Like, I mean, it's like, okay, what's the rare ones and what's not? And for an outside looking in, people are going to look at that and be like, what is this? So I guess my question for you, BitGod, is, ignoring all the noise, ignoring all the speculative terms and everything, what is the one thing for Ordinals that you are most excited for moving forward? Is it the BRC-20s? Is it the deck side of things? I mean, what has you just like, yes, this is going to be the next big meta, big wave going on in Ordinals?
So I think this is a great question. I think that Recursion will probably really bring in another wave of outstanding collections, or hopefully outstanding collections. Smarter founders and marketeers and all that sort of stuff to really build some interesting, never before seen, type collections. I think that there's always going to be people that just rip off, and do derivatives and like just be lazy with it. But I think that you can get really, really creative with all of this stuff, and that's what I'm looking out for. I think maybe if I could do another one, I'm generally looking forward to DeFi.
Yeah.
Right. I really am, because I think that, OmniSats is really going to be one of the first Bitcoin native, I think DeFi type protocols. And there's probably going to be some hiccups, there's going to be mistakes, but, I believe that that's probably going to be the start of any sort of Bitcoin related DeFi over this next year, right? Proving that you can do something on the base layer without smart contracts is going to be very key. And so that's something I'm in particular really, really looking forward to over this next year. And I've said it a bunch of times on spaces and stuff. I think that the next Bitcoin Miami, which I guess is no longer going to be in Miami now, it's going to be in Vegas, around the same time, basically a full year from now. Yeah, is going to be filled with not just like miners, not just, retail participants, but really builders, right? You go to many of these other conferences like Token 2049 and Permissionless and Consensus, right? It's filled with Uniswap and Coinbase and I'm trying to think of like Flow Carbon and a number of these other sort of, MetaMask, these protocols that are of course on top of ETH. I'm looking forward to the next Bitcoin Miami being very, very similar, right? Maybe there's an OmniSats booth and Ordinals bot booth and Luminex booth. And like, that is what I'm really looking forward to starting just the whole wave of Bitcoin as an ecosystem. And I think it has the potential to be just as large, if not larger than the Ethereum ecosystem. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. And being a part of that, 100%.
Really. I think that was
that
was the light bulb in our head is, Manny was showing us like, okay, this is what the market cap of all ERC-20 tokens are. And this is where BRC-20s are at right now. And like, you're going to miss on a bunch of them, I'm sure, but there are going to be a handful that are actually doing something that's incredibly innovative and on Bitcoin, no less. Like, again, this is going back to the most secure blockchain on earth. And there's going to be people that value proof of work and security of the blockchain over all else. And you're tapping into that market in full force. So I think that's the most exciting part. But the last question I have for you, because I don't want to, take up any more of your time. We are incredibly appreciative of this past hour. It's been awesome. But let's talk about tokens or BRC-20s that you're excited for. Obviously, outside of OXBT, we are all in on OXBT. But what are some other BRC-20s that you think are doing cool stuff, or at least, in that conversation of trying to push the boundaries of what Ordinals can do?
Yeah, I think I know the pizza guys well, the PIZA. I know the Wheat token guys, mainly Chinese community, WHEE. And then lastly, I think I believe it's just Oshi is the ticker. They're also experimenting on the DeFi side. I think maybe they also did a BOOS or BOSS. I'm not sure. I could be wrong there. But the Oshi guys, right? Merlin and Satoshi.ob. Those guys, I've seen some of the stuff that they're working on. If they can execute on it, I think could be pretty powerful. Always need to sort of be wary of I think like light papers or white papers and how much, of course, that's actually executed on. But those are just some of the ones I think that I'm excited about.
Oshi is the one that's trying to I don't want to say try to replicate Yearn Finance. I think that's what it is, right? Wi-Fi is the ticker over there, but kind of doing something somewhat similar. And I think that's incredibly cool. Yearn's one of the most interesting DeFi experiments I've seen in a while. So if they can do that over on Bitcoin, I mean, like, take it and then make it their own. I think that's definitely something I'm going to look out for. So, I'm going to leave you with any parting words, BitGod. What do you want the community to know? Is there anything we didn't touch up on that you're just super excited for with Ordinals or OXBT or Redacted or anything in between?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think a couple things, right? Look out for some of these more experiments. I think that most likely going to be on sort of my account. Trying to sort of silo some of this stuff off now, and you should see some more changes coming to the accounts, I think, coming soon. Look forward to that. Season 0 is coming. We're incredibly excited about that and working our asses off all of that. And I think that there's potentially more surprises coming soon as well that we're excited about, and you're just working through the granular details on. I just, to lastly sort of post there, just would love to, just really thankful for you guys, of course, having me on the podcast today. Appreciate, you guys taking the time as well, and just generally looking forward to the future of Ordinals, and excited to be a part of that with you guys as well.
Likewise.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, we seriously appreciate you. We appreciate everybody showing up for today's episode. If you guys don't know who we are RareFUD Radio. We do air every Tuesday, Thursday across the ecosystem now. It's not just Solana or BRC-20s or Ordinals or anything in between. We just try to bring on the people that are trying to do the coolest shit in Web3 and talk to them. So we do appreciate you, BitGod. You are by far, probably one of the hottest commodities on the market right now, with everything you got going on with Redacted and OXBT. We're excited to see what the future holds for you. We appreciate the shit out of you and what you're trying to do for Ordinals and what you're doing for the space. And we're excited to see what comes, man. So seriously, thank you so much for your time.
Completely agree. Thanks, BitGod.
Thank you guys for watching today's episode of RareFUD Radio. Please, if you could, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down on the bottom right. And then we do upload on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So if you do prefer that, and you're going on your way to work or anything in between, we got you covered. That about does it for us on today's episode of RareFUD Radio. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.